I asked my boss for a raise, using psychology. What happened shocked me. Last week I walked into my boss's office and asked for a 50% raise. Not 5%, not 10%, 50%. And, as expected, she said no immediately. But something interesting happened next. I used a simple psychological principle. A principle so powerful that 10 minutes later she called me back into her office, and what she said completely surprised me, because suddenly, she was ready to negotiate. So in this video I'm going to show you exactly what happened, step by step. And more importantly, I'll explain the psychology behind why it worked. Because if you understand these principles, you can use them in almost any negotiation, salary, business, even everyday conversations. So, let me explain the situation. I had been working at my company for about 3 years. I worked hard, I delivered results, my projects were successful. But there was one problem: my salary didn't reflect my value. And deep down, I knew it. But here's the thing most people do wrong. When they ask for a raise, they make it emotional. They say things like, but from a psychological perspective, that approach almost always fails. Because your boss isn't thinking about your emotions. Your boss is thinking about the company's interests. So I realized something important. If I wanted a raise, I needed to make it logical for her, not emotional for me. Before the meeting, I spent several days preparing, not rehearsing what I would say emotionally, preparing evidence. I gathered everything: projects I completed, revenue I helped generate, problems I solved, efficiency improvements, even market salary comparisons. So, finally, I scheduled a meeting with my boss, but here's something important. I didn't say. Instead, I said, immediately the tone of the meeting changed. Instead of sounding like a complaint, it sounded like ambition. Psychologically, this is called framing. The way you frame a conversation determines how the other person reacts. And my boss instantly became more interested. During the meeting, I showed her everything. My results, my numbers, my contributions. I explained how my work helped the company grow, and I compared my role with industry salary standards. Suddenly, the conversation was no longer about my feelings. It was about business logic. And that's when I introduced the next psychological element. I casually mentioned something. I said, I really enjoy working here, but recently I've been receiving interest from other companies. Notice something important. And suddenly my boss had a new concern. If she lost me, the company would lose experience, productivity, and time. Replacing employees is expensive. Training takes time. Scarcity creates urgency.
I understand your point, but 50% is a very big increase.
And she said no, at least at first. And honestly, I expected that, because negotiation always begins with resistance. So, instead of arguing, I used another psychological principle. I said something different. If the company is willing to work with me on this raise, I'm willing to commit more responsibility. I offered to lead a new project, mentor junior employees, and take additional ownership. This changes the psychology completely. Instead of asking for money, I was proposing an investment. An investment feels different than cost. People resist costs, but they support investments. At the end of the meeting, she said,
"Let me think about it."
And this is where most people make a mistake. They wait indefinitely. Instead, I added one final element, a deadline. I said, I completely understand you need time to think, but since I've been approached by other companies, I'll need an answer by Friday. Deadlines trigger urgency. Without urgency, decisions get delayed. With urgency, decisions get made. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was my boss. She asked me to come back into her office, and this time, the tone was different.
"We can't approve 50%, but we can approve 40%, and we'll review your salary again in 6 months."
Now from the outside, it might look like she won the negotiation, but here's the interesting part. I entered the meeting knowing something. Negotiations are rarely about the first number. They're about the final agreement, and 40% was already a huge win. What actually happened during that meeting? 5 psychological principles work together. First, framing. I framed the conversation around value instead of money. Second, data numbers created credibility. Third, scarcity. The possibility of losing me increased my value. Fourth, reciprocity. I offered commitment in return for compensation. Fifth, urgency. The deadline forced a decision. These principles influence how people think, and most importantly, they shift conversations from emotional reactions to logical decisions. But something even more interesting happened after the raise. My boss started treating me differently, not negatively, actually with more respect. Why? Because I negotiated professionally, not emotionally, and psychology changes perception. When you communicate strategically, people start seeing you differently. So, if you ever feel underpaid, don't approach the conversation emotionally. Approach it strategically. Prepare your data, frame the conversation correctly, show your value, and understand the psychology behind decision-making, because negotiation isn't about forcing someone to say yes. It's about creating a situation where yes becomes the logical answer. Now I'm curious, have you ever negotiated your salary? And if you have, did it work? Tell me in the comments, and if you found this video useful, share it with someone who might be underpaid right now, because sometimes, all it takes is understanding a little psychology. I'll see you in the next video.